can I have some sense from others how long they're likely to be? Miss Alfonso, what do you think?
Maybe 20 to 25 minutes.
Half an hour. Mr.
Oops.
Yes. Mr. Pigas, do you have any?
I have no questions.
No questions. Right. Mr. Ramadan.
Thank you very much. Well, appreciating time is of the essence here. I will try to contain it within half hour.
Half an hour. That's midday. No, well, that's lunchtime. Midday. No, well, that's lunchtime. What do you think, Miss Mirage?
I may be 30 minutes to
half
an hour. But of course, the caveat is, from my end, it depends if my questions have been covered already.
No, I appreciate that. And of course, I understand others may cover, before he gets to you, the questions you might have wanted to ask. What do you think, Mr. Peterson?
So far, so we only have one question, and it may be extinguished by the time Mr. Mirage finishes with 90 minutes.
So the question realistically is whether if we finish with Mr. Piper by, say, 3 o'clock today, whether we start with Mr. Mushtaq Mohammed. Any submissions about that? What I wouldn't want to do is to leave Mr. Mushtaq Mohammed half heard, as it were, over the Christmas break.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be fair on him.
We were suggesting a part of it, but yes.
You were suggesting?
No, we were thinking about maybe doing the summary and probably Council to the Commission could do their course, but then that would leave it passive and hanging. So it may seem that we have an early day today. So. Yes,
I think we may have we have a little bit of reading to do. We could use up some of the time with that. My inclination at the moment is to rise once we've dealt with Mr. Piper. He's an important witness. People should be permitted to ask questions. And I know my interruptions are always making it last longer than it would otherwise be. But I think that's what we'll do, in which case we will release Mr. Mushtaq Mohammed for today.
Yes, sir. Yeah, because he'll be on his way from...
Well, that's why I thought we'd venture it now, rather than him making his way here, only to be told go home again, or go back to work, whichever he prefers. But it seems to me that the sensible thing to do would be to release him now. And during the course of this afternoon, we'll determine exactly what the order of the remaining witnesses will be. I see you have a hand up. Mr. Pigas.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. On second thought, I would only question this witness if for the remainder of his evidence he says something that concerns my client.
No, of course.
But up to this point, I don't have any questions. I just wanted to make that clear.
I'm not holding anybody to this. I understand that it's a little fluid at the moment. So yeah, if you have questions, then it'll be permitted. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, then let's do that. We will release Mr. Mushtaq Mohammed. Somebody can tell him, please, that he's released. And we'll notify everybody certainly by tomorrow what the position will be in relation to all the remaining witnesses and the 8 days or so that we have left earmarked for this inquiry's public hearings. All right, we'll do that then. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mr. Piper.
Yes, Mr. Piper, when the adjournment was taken, I was telling you that when I look at the evidence of the timeline, I want to suggest to you, it did not seem as though you and the IMT acted with urgency to save human lives.
Okay, sir.
No, I'm going to put the timeline to you. So I'm going to, okay? Because according to you, Mitchell, I will read, Mitchell was contacted and they were on standby from 8:40 p.m. We went through that this morning, right?
That's not in my statement. I don't think that's in my statement.
But I read the evidence to you.
Yes, you did. Okay, yes.
Eastern Emergency Response Services were not contacted until 11:40 p.m. on Friday. OTSL was there from 8 p.m. and remained on standby until 5:30 a.m. Hull Support Services received a call at 4:30 p.m. and they did not go to the site. Hummingbird was contacted at 10:50 p.m. on Friday, and Catherine Balkizun said that the crawler went in at 3 a.m. on this Saturday. Now, if it is as you said, that you were acting urgently to save human lives, could you tell us why it is that you could not contact these people to get whatever advice you wanted earlier?
Right. So you, I'm sure looking through the evidence, you'd have seen that we had a camera. We had contacted PISL, Professional Inspection Services Limited. They were on site, I think, by about 7:30, right? So we had them on site very quickly.
Sorry, remind me, I missed that.
Yes, Professional Inspection Services Limited, PISL, right? They were on site, right? Now, we don't have this equipment on hand, of course, so we have to source this equipment, right? So we had PISL on site. That would be the IMT, the members of the IMT Logistics and so on. They were trying to source equipment. So they were on site at about 7:30 p.m. on Friday, right? So we did start actioning very quickly. Once they got on site, unfortunately, there was an issue with the light on the camera, and we were not able to use the PISL. We also had on site via OTSL. We had a
sorry. Just I want to keep an accurate note of this,
yes,
and it's quite a long answer to the question you were asked. So I just want to keep a record of it. So you're saying that they had the camera on site at 7:30.
Yes, sir.
But you couldn't use it because it didn't have a light.
Yes, there was an issue with the light on the camera. Yes, sir.
You mean it didn't have a light?
It wasn't bright enough. It wasn't bright enough. Yeah. So it didn't,
Light.
or it didn't work. Yes.
Not working or not bright enough.
Yeah.
So it couldn't be used.
So it could not be used.
So you're back to square one.
Right. Yes, sir. We also had a remote operated vehicle that came up on site with OTSL.
An ROV.
An ROV. Yeah. Yes, sir. And that was when OTSL came up, I believe, and that was about maybe 8:30, 8:40.
I think it arrived at 8:37.
Yeah, okay, yes, sir, somewhere.
When were they called up, please?
Right, so OTSL, when we, through Heritage, right, because I did not make those calls, we had contacted Heritage, that is Mr. Mohammed.
It doesn't matter how they get,
yeah, but so we had they contacted their dive supervisor, Mr. Seals, and Rolf Seals, and he started putting these things in place. He started mobilizing these people, Mitchell, OTSL, Hull Support, and so on. Right? So they, of course, had to transit from Point Fortin, I believe, so they came up on site.
So, no, it hasn't answered my question, which is, when were they contacted? I don't care who by, but when?
There would be sometime after 4, between 4 and 5, right? I don't have the exact time that Mr. Seals contacted them, sir.
Right. And that doesn't appear, does it, in any of your logs?
No, that wouldn't be in the log. Those contacts would have been made before Mr. Seals arrived. I believe it was Mr. Seals who made those contacts.
And Mr. Seals did it at whose behest?
At Heritage's behest, on behalf of PARIA.
On behalf of PARIA?
Yes, sir. That was early on.
That's
to the best of my knowledge, yes.
So sometime between 4 and 5. So
yes.
You mobilised an ROV between 4 and 5 that afternoon.
To the best of my knowledge.
Before, therefore, before Mr. Boudram came out of the pipe.
Right. So, again, to the best of my knowledge, I believe that was around the time when Mr. Seals had spoken to OTSL and the diving companies, right? When he was called.
But presumably you were ordering the ROV to examine the pipe.
Ordering the well, I don't know if they had it on board, but we just wanted as much equipment as we could because we did not know what was happening at the time.
I'm only trying to understand your answer. Is it the case that you understand Mr. Seals contacted OTSL for an ROV sometime between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock that afternoon with a view to using that ROV to go into the pipe?
Right. I don't know if Mr. Seals specifically asked for an ROV, but I know he would have spoken to those dive companies, and OTSL had an ROV when they arrived. I don't know the specific, if he asked, I don't know. But we had an ROV on site which we attempted to use.
So it might have been just good fortune that there happened to be one.
Right. When we tried, he would have, I assumed, this is just an assumption, whatever equipment, because at that time we weren't sure.
We'll ask Mr. Seals. Yeah. Anyway, you believe that the assistance was being sought between 4 and 5 o'clock?
When Mr. Seals, to the best of my knowledge.
Yes. And OTSL arrived at about 8:37. All right, thank you.
Right.
Good day, Mr. Piper. I just have one question here. Ian, yesterday I heard you said that you were part of the Management Tenders Committee.
Yes, sir.
All right, so, and you've identified diving as a specialist type of scope of work on your facilities or in your assets. Being part of that committee, you would have some idea of the commercial diver capabilities within country. So with that knowledge, well, do you have?
No, sir, I'm not very familiar. This was more like construction and so on. So I can't say I'm not very familiar.
Well, a dive company or a commercial dive company would be a commercial dive company with the capabilities of which you expected. Or you said that you said the expertise are there. So how many companies in the tender process, just to go back a bit, that you are aware of that you selected LMCS from?
I can't say offhand, sir. I don't remember offhand.
Okay, because I was kind of going with PARIA's awareness of commercial dive capabilities, why you would have to depend on another company. It could be a bit time-consuming. Right,
because we have really used mainly LMCS to do our works. In the past, we had a master services agreement with them. So we have not used OTSL. We did not use OTSL or Hull, but we know that Heritage was using these companies, so we depended on Heritage in this case to assist us.
Okay, but I heard you say that it was Heritage recommended it to you. But if you were aware of them, you would be aware that they have commercial diving capability.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, but we thought the assistance from Heritage would be quicker, we thought.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Yes, Mr. Maharaj. As I understand, your answer to Mr. Maharaj is that the professional inspection services arrived on site at 7:30, but their light wasn't working, so you couldn't use it. There was an ROV which arrived on site around 8:37 that evening.
Correct.
Was it deployed?
Right. So Catherine did speak with Andrew Farrell, the dive supervisor, about using the ROV, and she advised that Mr. Farrell said the ROV couldn't work, it was too big to get into the pipeline. So we were not able to use the ROV.
You mean the dimensions of the ROV
yes.
were too great to fit inside a 30-inch pipe?
Yes.
And the first you knew of that was when it arrived on site?
Yes. Right, when Catherine told me she spoke to Andrew.
Right. So that couldn't be used either.
Yes. So we had to look at options, right?
Well, it's now 8:37.
Yeah.
Given the timeline that you told me about before our break, this is some hours after the event. Mr. Boudram having come out of the pipeline about 5:30 or so. We're now 3 hours on.
Right.
We're coming to a critical time, aren't we?
Right.
Go on then.
Right. So our logistics persons, the logistics group, continued trying to source because we needed to understand what we were up against. So the logistics continued trying to source with the assistance of Heritage. I was working with Heritage as well. We had Mr. Osei Fleming Holder there. So I continued to work with him to get in contact, to help us as well. Mr. Wee Logistics was working to get equipment. And that is when we said, okay, we were able to get Atlantic LNG equipment, and we were able to get HSL with the bore scope. So they were working feverishly to get these people on site. So that we can assess the pipeline. Atlantic LNG.
Yeah. What were they doing?
Say again?
What were they going to achieve for you?
Yes, they came with a pipe crawler, what we call a crawler.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you speak to Atlantic?
Sorry. They came in with a bore scope, I think, and HHSL had the pipe crawler. Atlantic LNG came with a bore scope.
Boroscope?
Yes.
That's some other form of camera, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Did you speak to them or somebody else?
To call them in?
Yeah.
No, that was our logistics.
Right. So Mr. Way or Mr. Seals, is that right?
Or Mr. Way or Mr. Holder. Right. I believe might have been Mr. Way.
All right. And they were going to get a boroscope?
Yes, sir.
Did they tell you what the ETA for that boroscope was?
Yes, Mr. Way would have mentioned to me what the ETA of the boroscope was, yes.
What was it?
Yeah. Would have been sometime, I think, around maybe after 9, he said the boroscope would be there.
After 9?
Yes.
That evening?
Yes.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Did it arrive after 9?
It would be on the timeline, sir, when it arrived. Nice.
I think, if I may intervene, at
Please.
paragraph 104 of Mr. Michael Wise's statement, at page 1289, he said at around 9 p.m., a pushed camera with operating crew from Atlantic LNG arrived on site. They were briefed and dispatched to Bird 6.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. And when did they actually put the boroscope in?
It was
Around midnight.
It was put in around
About 3 hours later.
Yeah,
Yes.
around midnight.
So the boroscope arrived at 9, and it entered the pipe.
Around midnight.
Do you know why that was?
Yes, sir.
Can
I'll
you tell
explain.
us, please?
Okay. Right.
Go ahead.
Right. So we had, of course, the situation at that time was we had the riser coming up and we had the hyperbaric chamber over the riser, right? In the initial condition at the time of the incident, Mr. If I may. Mr. Kazim Ali contacted me around 9 o'clock. He contacted me and he indicated that he wanted to install the extension piece on the riser, which was to be installed that day. His explanation was that if he, with the hyperbaric chamber there, if he had any failing with the compressor, then the chamber would flood, right? And, you know, then it would cause more problems for us. So he requested to insert the new riser. He also indicated, well, when the cameras come, the insertion of the new riser would help us, because with the hyperbaric chamber in place, pressed down, what we would have to do is to drop the camera, the bore scope, into the water from the barge, bring it under the hyperbaric chamber, and then into the pipe. So we would have some difficulty with that. So he asked that we install the riser pipe. We agreed to install the riser pipe. He utilized the guys who were there diving, he utilized them to install the riser pipe. I think they had it completed sometime maybe a little after 10. Then what they had to do was they needed now to access from the top of the hyperbaric chamber. So we had to install some scaffolding quickly to get the bore scope up there. And he also had to take off the top of the hyperbaric chamber, the top cover. So all of that took some time, right? So that is why the Atlantic LNG camera only went in a little bit later, but it would need it very simpler for him.
Can I ask, just in relation to that, why this wasn't done hours before? You knew you wanted a camera in there. Why didn't you do it hours before?
Right. So we were, while we were pushing for the cameras, I actually didn't think about installing it and bringing it from there. I was working on going through the hyperbaric chamber. It's only when Mr. Ali brought it to our attention, we thought, well, okay, let's see what we could do. And to make it easier.
Sorry, I'm struggling a little to understand why, given that the idea of a camera was yours, to put a camera in the pipe to see what the conditions of the pipe were, why wasn't this all sorted out in advance of any camera arriving?
Well, at the time, it was just to get the camera down into the pipe, the standard way.
I understand about getting the camera into the pipe. Yeah. If there was going to be a problem in taking the camera down into the water, up into the hyperbaric chamber, and then down into the pipe, that must have been apparent to the IMT and you before you even ordered a camera.
Well, it's not that it was a problem. It's just it could have been done. We could have done it, right? That was not.
Well, given
it is not that it could not be done. Yes.
Forgive me, given the time was of the essence, why did you wait 3 hours? You had the camera. It was important. You're now up against your timeline that you described to me earlier today, right? You've used up 3 of your 5 hours that you think you've got. You're now going to take 3 hours past the timeline that you've got to put a camera in there. Why wouldn't you just say, well, look, we don't have time to do this, Mr. Ali or whoever else was suggesting it. We just got to get that camera in there now. Why not?
Right. Well,
sorry, I know I'm trying to give you the opportunity to answer, but I am struggling a little to understand why, if you thought, if the IMT, at your command, thought that it was important before we effect a rescue to put a camera in there, why were not the conditions for putting the camera in there not created before the camera even arrives? You don't have to wait for the camera to arrive before you can start doing those jobs, do you?
So, understood. It just wasn't, I suppose it wasn't thought of at the time, right, when Mr. Ali came to me, I said,
Pause
okay, it's going to be easier.
Pause, please. Wasn't thought.
Yes.
All right. That's your answer, that it hadn't been thought out at the time by you or anyone else in the IMT that this might need to be done before the camera even arrives.
Right, because that is correct, because Mr. Ali came to us about 9 o'clock with the indication that he called me around 9 o'clock.
Yeah. You spoke to Mr. Ali for 3.5 minutes at 7:45 that evening.
Right.
Why didn't you raise it then?
No, at that point in time, I was just operating with the hyperbaric chamber.
No, I understand that, but
yes.
you were the one who wanted the camera.
Yes.
Did Mr. Ali want the camera?
Yes, of course, yes.
Did he say that as a prerequisite to sending any diver into that pipe, I want a camera in there?
No, he did not.
No. So he would have been prepared to have sent divers in there, or divers might have been prepared to go in there, without having seen what the conditions inside that you wanted were. I'm not criticising you for wanting to have observation of what was in the pipe. I just want to understand the timeline, how it works. Do you follow?
Yeah.
And once you knew that you had a camera at 9 o'clock, and at the earliest, it was going to take you 3 hours to create the environment in which you could insert that camera, you were past your own deadline.
No, I did not realize at the time, sir, it was going to take that time. He told me within about half an hour to an hour, he's going to have that riser in. I did not know that at the time, right, in my discussions with him.
Okay, all right.
Right?
Yes, sorry, Mr.
I did not
Wilson has a question for you. Sorry.
Yes, just taking off from where the chairman left, but I'm going to try and bring it in. As an IC, once you had your situational awareness, it's speaking to the same thing as the chairman. So you had the initial incident response, you had the objective settings. I heard some verbiage around priorities, assumptions, and constraints, but what I'm trying to find out now from an IMT, ISC, and an IC, incident commander, what were your operational periods that you set to put a tactical plan in place? So just to bring it more in place, if it could help the chair in terms of bringing timelines into your plan, if there was a plan.
Yeah, right. So at the time of the incident on Friday evening, right? At that time, we were pushing hard, really, to see what was available, how quickly we could get it available.
I understand, and let me interrupt again. What I'm asking is, as an incident commander, did you set out operational periods which would speak into your tactical plan, meaning we'll go away for 45 minutes and we'll come back with an action plan? Or was anything like that established in your IMT?
No, certainly not on the Friday evening, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Maharaj. Thank you.
Much obliged.
For directing me in that direction. Thank you.
So, but you had available during this delay was because you wanted cameras to go and see the condition in the pipe.
I wanted to assess what was in the pipeline.
Yes, and that was important for you.
Yes, sir.
But you had available divers who were prepared to go into the pipeline without cameras, without having a camera.
Yes, sir.
But during the delay period, did it occur to you that you could consider using the divers if they want to go in? The question is simple, Mr. Did you consider it?
Yes, sir, if I may explain.
You considered it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I may explain.
And you decided against it?
Yes, sir, because I did not, at the time, have information as to what was happening in that pipeline. And I know I have said this before,
yes, you have
right?
said that several times,
right? So I could not, at that time, just send somebody sanction. PARIA could not sanction at that time, just sending somebody into that pipeline.
But you knew Budram had come out of the pipeline and Kurban had gone in the pipeline, and that was not sufficient for you.
Right, so I knew Mr. Budram had come out of the pipeline, right? I knew Mr. Kerban had gone in 10 to 15 feet into the horizontal, right? So that didn't give me any information, right? However, I still didn't understand the conditions. Now, you will appreciate, as the incident commander, I have a priority. The safety of the responder is a very high priority for me. So before I could send any responder, any rescuer into that line, I had to ensure or be reasonably certain that it was safe for him to do so. I could not just send somebody into that pipeline.
Okay, you've said that, and I'll come to what you said.
I just want to record that, please.
Yes.
You said the safety of the responder is a very high priority, and I can understand that.
That is correct.
And so it should be.
Yes.
But you said that before you could send anyone to go into the pipeline, have I got this right, you need to be either sure or reasonably certain before as to the conditions.
And of his safety, that he could go in and come back out safely.
Certain of their safety before you could do so.
Yes, sir.
And is the effect of that to say that until you had a camera inside that pipe, you were never going to sanction a rescue?
Until I could have an assessment of that pipe, that would have been very difficult.
You've made that clear, and I absolutely have your evidence on that. But the effect, the way in which you were going to do that was by having a camera of some kind in that pipeline.
Correct.
So up until that point in time, you got footage of what was inside that pipeline.
Correct.
You were never going to sanction a rescuer going into the pipeline.
I could not sanction it, and I would, of course, have to seek expert advice as well to do that, yes.
But we're looking back at it now,
yes.
aren't we? I mean, obviously, as things were unfolding at the time, different factors play. But looking back on it now, your analysis of what you did in the IMT, your position was, I'm not going to sanction, I think to use your word, I'm not going to sanction anyone going into that pipe to effect any kind of rescue until I knew the conditions of the pipe. That's the first thing. And you add to that by saying, I won't know the conditions of the pipe until I've sent a camera in to have a look.
Yes, correct.
So the net result of that is, until a camera went in the pipe, there was no prospect of my sanctioning anyone diving into that pipe.
It would be very difficult for me so to do so.
Very difficult? Were there any circumstances in which you would be prepared to sanction it?
I could not, sir. I could not sanction it.
No, I understand it. I just want to be clear. And I really do understand what you're saying. That was the criteria for you. I needed to know what was the conditions in that pipe, and I needed to get a camera in there.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. One matter arising from that, I just want to make a note of that. Were you aware of a GoPro that had been retrieved from the pipe?
I heard something that they had some GoPro. Catherine was trying to look at it, and she suspected it was a GoPro, right? And with LMCS, and they couldn't, and they were not showing her anything. She wasn't certain it was a GoPro. We were not certain.
I think in your statement you referred to it, don't you? Someone direct me to that passage. Yes.
That was in Catherine.
All right, anyway, you weren't sure if there was a GoPro? Or?
Yes, Catherine said she saw them looking at something. She wasn't sure what it was, right? May or may not have been a GoPro.
Yeah.
And did you make an inquiry of that, of Mr. Ali
No, I did not make any inquiry. No.
I mean, it's quite important, this, isn't it? If it was a GoPro, might have met your needs.
Well, any GoPro, nothing came out of the pipe, so it would not have been in the pipe.
Well, we don't know.
Yeah.
Do you, Mr. Wasn't it suggested that the GoPro was retrieved from the pipe?
No. All Catherine told me it was they were looking at something she thought maybe a GoPro.
What, that Mr. Kerban hadn't retrieved this from the pipe?
I can't recall if she said she didn't. I can't recall her telling me that. I recall her telling me she saw them looking at something when she tried to look at it. When she tried to go across, they moved away, and we were not getting any information from them.
Just a minute. All right, well, I won't hold up proceedings. I'll have a look and see if I can find it. Thank you very much.
Much obliged, sir. Well, since you were very anxious to see what is in the pipe, you know, at some stage a crawler went in to get a recording of what is in the pipe, a photo, a video of what was in the pipe.
Right. So, sir, if...
Would you just try to answer my question? Do you know whether a crawler went into the pipe to get a video?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what time it went in?
It would have went in sometime after midnight, sir.
Would it be correct to say it went in at around 3 a.m.? I'm referring to the witness statement of Catherine Balkison at paragraph 31. At
Yes.
3 a.m.?
Mm-hmm.
Page 133.
Right.
At page 1333.
Right.
Would you agree to that?
Yes, that is what she said, sir.
Yes. At 3 a.m., where were you?
I would have been in the incident command post.
Did you go home for 3 hours?
Right.
At paragraph 155,
Mm-hmm.
page 1372.
Right.
While you were the incident commander,
Mm-hmm.
managing an emergency, men in the pipe,
Mm-hmm.
you went home. At what time you went home?
Sometime maybe after 4, sir.
Sometime after
Yeah.
4?
Yes, sir. Right.
And you spent 3 hours?
Maybe 2, maybe 3 hours I was back.
According to your statement at paragraph 155, after you said what happened at paragraph 153 and 154, you said sometime thereafter I left the ICP for home. I returned to the ICP about 3 hours later.
Yes.
And at paragraph 157 of your witness statement, you said, upon my return to the ICP, I was advised by Catherine or another person, I cannot now recall, that the crawler was sent down at berth 5, but there was too much oil, so it wasn't able to get too far. I was told that it had to be retracted and the lens cleaned, which was difficult to do.
Right. So if I may back up, please, and explain. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we got the camera footage, right? What little camera footage we were able to get, I believe, from Atlantic LNG. That would have been around midnight, right? Once we got that camera footage, I contacted Mr. Rolf Seals. Well, he was in the incident command, right, with Mr. Osei Holder. Good. I spoke to Mr. Seals, and I instructed him, listen, we have this video footage, right? This would be something right around midnight when we first got it. I told Mr. Seals, go to the berth with the dive companies, Mitchell and OTSL. Go with them, get their supervisors, have a look at the video footage. Let them examine what video footage we had, however little it was, and discuss with them if they would be prepared to enter the pipeline to do a rescue.
Rescue?
Yes, sir.
But on your timeline, at 3 a.m. in the morning?
No, sir, this was right around midnight.
Oh, that was around midnight?
Yes, sir. Okay. Right? So I asked him to speak with them. Mr. Seals returned. Mr. Seals returned about an hour after. He had gone to Bird 6 with the divers, with the dive supervisors. He advised me, in the presence of Mr. Osei Fleming-Holder, he advised me that he reviewed the video footage with the two dive supervisors. And the dive supervisors both agreed that it was too risky and they will not allow their personnel to go into that pipeline. They simply did not have the information. I subsequently asked Mr. Seals what was his view. I asked Mr. Seals what was his view. Mr. Seals advised me that he simply did not have the information. It was too risky. So he was of like mind.
You mean to put him
Right.
out of the school with him?
Right.
What time are we talking about when you're being advised of this?
This was shortly after 1 o'clock. I instructed him to go shortly after midnight to speak with the divers just as soon as we got the video footage, and then this was about 1 o'clock.
So this is 7.5 hours after Mr. Boudram has emerged
Yes,
from the
sir.
pipe.
Yes, sir.
7.5 hours.
Yes, sir. We are still trying. Right?
Help me in this way, please. On your own timeline, what were the prospects of any of them being alive 7.5 hours after Mr. Boudram came out of the pipe?
The prospects were getting slim, sir. Very slim.
Well, what you told me before we had our break was probably zero.
Very slim, sir.
See, there's as I said to you, I think before, there's diminishing returns, isn't it? If you're a rescuer and there is a good prospect of saving people who are alive, you might take a greater risk than if you wait and there is a very, very slim chance of anyone being alive to risk you or your colleague divers.
Right.
That is an equation which anyone would calculate, isn't it?
Correct.
Good sense. The slimmer the chance of anyone being alive, the less likelihood you're going to risk your own and others' lives in trying to rescue them.
Okay. So if I may I explain?
You may.
Right, okay. I am confronted on the night. Let's go to the night, right? We are confronted with a situation. I have 4 men in a pipe, right? I did not know the conditions in the pipe. I understood it is a confined space. It is a dangerous space. I had a decision to make. Let's look at, say, I know Mr. Kerban was prepared to go in the pipe, right? Mr. Kerban was a courageous young man. His father was in the pipe. I get that. I get he would want to go.
Carry on.
Yes, sir.
No, we won't have any shouting out from the back of the courtroom, please.
Right.
You address my question, please.
Yes, sir. Right. I have a decision to make, a difficult decision.
Yes.
If I allow somebody, if PARIA sanctions somebody who is strongly emotionally attached, at that time he would be angry, right? And he was angry at that time. I am putting that young man's life in danger. sanctioning something to put that young man's life in danger, I have a responsibility for that young man, right?
Well, he had a responsibility for his father as well, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right? So I had a responsibility to that young man. What happens, I also had to think through, what happens if Mr. Kurban gets in difficulty in that pipeline? Then I had another courageous young man, Mr. Conan Bedu, who would want to go into rescue Mr. Michael Kurban, right? I could have two people in difficulty. I'm adding numbers. I understand Mr. Bedo's brother was there. Mr. Bedo gets into difficulty, or if I send him in first, or if he goes in first, he gets into difficulty. What would his brother do? His brother would go in.
No, his brother was going to pull him out because he would be attached by a line.
Well, sir, it's... would you pull him out in what conditions? I don't know. I couldn't tell.
Well, he might have been injured.
I don't know.
He might have been.
Right? He may have been dead, sir. I don't know.
He might have been.
Right? Do I take that risk to send somebody in there? And that was not a simple decision. Right?
No one suggests it is. That's why you got that job.
Yeah, and I believe it was the right decision at the time. As difficult as it was not a simple decision.
All right.
Okay, sir. So I'm in that position on that night, that situation.
The net result, though, is that because you took the stance you had, and as I say, I can assure you I have not made up my mind one way or the other about any of this yet. I'm hearing the evidence, all right? I have an open mind as to whether what you were doing was right or wrong, and I don't think actually anybody can second guess that. What is true is that there was no timeline as what you told us today, and therefore the decisions that you were making, difficult though they were effectively being determined by the fact that you insisted on having details of the inside of that pipeline by virtue of a camera, and that was going to take you outside of your own timeline as to whether they could survive or not. So the decision was actually made for you once you decided, I must have that camera footage.
And as I said, I had a responsibility to the responder, sir.
All right. Did you actually discuss the particular plan with Mr. Bedo or with Mr. Kurban at the time?
No, sir. I was liaising with Mr. Ali. I did not discuss with them.
Did he discuss it with you?
No, sir. He never discussed any plan with me.
Did anyone discuss? I mean, you've discovered Mr. Bedo's willingness after the event, have you?
No, I knew he was on site, and I knew divers were going in. They were willing. Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, you just told us about him being willing to go into the pipe. Did you know that at the time, or did you know that only after the event?
I didn't know it was Mr. Bedo himself, but I knew at the time people were willing to go in the pipe.
Right. And did you, in knowing that, did you obtain from them any plan that might mitigate your concerns about not knowing what the condition of the pipeline was?
No, sir. All I knew from them that they would. People said they were just going into the pipe. They had no plan.
Who told you they had no plan?
Nobody came forward with any plan, sir.
No one came forward with any plan.
Right? No one knew we did not know the conditions.
No one came forward with any plan. And am I right in saying you didn't ask any of these divers if what plan they had?
I was liaising with Mr. Kazim Ali. I was trying to get in touch with Mr. Kazim Ali, and I could not. Right? I spoke to him, and when he eventually called me, it was to put on the riser.
So Kazim Ali gave you no plan.
Yes.
Did you speak with Ms. Balkisoon, who was your on-site liaison?
Yes, I was in constant contact with Ms. Balkisoon.
Did she tell you of any plan that she'd been informed of?
She did not tell me of any plan that she would have been informed of.
Right.
And
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And if Ms. Balkisoon had been informed of any plan, she would have told me.
Well, she's spoken for herself.
Mr. Piper, there are two aspects of my question that I want to ask you on further. One is the IMT notes that have been given to us. And the first item, the next item I want to talk to you about is the factors which you considered in your statement to refuse to permit diving into the pipeline. So I will take you to it, right? At paragraph 98.
Could you tell me what page, please, sir?
Page 1363. It starts at 1363, but the factors start at 1364. Now, these are the factors when you wrote your witness statement that you wanted the Commission to consider as to the basis of your decision to prevent diving in the pipeline. So let us go to paragraph 98.1. The event which caused the divers to be taken into the pipeline was unknown. But you knew that it was the delta P that caused the accident. A delta P, a latent delta P became active that caused the accident. You knew by 3:23 p.m. on the Friday, when you spoke to Mr. Kazim Ali, you got an account of how the accident occurred. Not so?
Right.
And you told us today that you had thoughts it could have been where the men were sucked into the pipeline.
Right.
Correct?
Correct.
So that the event which caused the divers to be taken into the pipeline was known, not unknown.
No, sir.
It was unknown?
No, sir. So at that time, right, all I got from Mr. Ali is that they had removed the first plug and they were removing the second plug, right? What happened, what I mean here is what happened with the plug, I did not know.
You did not know?
I didn't know if the plug, I did not know if the plug was ruptured. I don't know if the plug was pulled in. That is what I mean. I didn't know what actually happened, of course.
But you knew you knew that the event which caused the divers to be taken into the pipeline was a delta P hazard.
Right.
Did you know that?
Yes,
at the time when
I'm trying to explain.
Did you know that at the time when you make your witness statement?
I was not fully, or at the time I made the witness statement, this is at the time of, this here is at the time of the night.
Yes.
Right? It's at the time of the night I'm writing it.
And at the time you made your witness statement, this is what you were saying, which influenced you in not sending a diver. These are the factors that you said in your witness statement. No. And this is one factor.
Right. So in my witness statement, those are the factors on the night,
yes,
not after the fact.
I know. And it's one of the factors, what is stated in 98.1, not so?
Correct.
So what I'm asking you, on that night, at that night or that day, you knew that it was a delta P hazard. What are you saying to that? That's not correct?
Right. I'm saying, yes, sir, I knew at that time the men were drawn into the pipe, but I did not know what caused it. If it was they deflated the plug, I didn't know if the plug was ruptured. I did not know.
So
what resulted. Yes.
In other words, you didn't know the position of the plug.
That is correct, sir.
But you knew that the man was sucked into the pipe.
Yes, Mr. Bodram came out and he said the men were in the pipe. Yes, sir.
So you knew it was a delta P hazard.
Yes, but what actually, the actual cause I was uncertain of. Just to repeat.
Did that matter?
Well,
If it was
yes,
delta
sir.
P, it was delta P.
No, sir, it mattered because if the plug was not ruptured, then I'm not sure if there's going to be a secondary delta P. I didn't know. If the plug was ruptured, then it would be different. The conditions would be different, right? So I did not know.
Ruptured? What do you mean?
Well, I don't know if the plug had burst. I don't know, right? Or if the plug was just drawn in.
All right, but sorry. But if you had fear about another delta P, you wouldn't be looking for a camera. You would be looking for an expert to tell you whether another delta P could have occurred. But you were looking for cameras. Would cameras show you whether another delta P would take place?
Right, and Mr. Wee spoke to OTSL, right? Antonio, a gentleman by the name of Antonio. We spoke with him. During the night, he was explaining to us about the delta P occurrence, and he also indicated that we need to try to, until we could be sure that there's not a second delta P, then it would be very dangerous to send those divers in. So that was an uncertainty for us, sir.
But Mr. Piper, in San Fernando and other places in Trinidad, you could have contacted an expert to get that opinion whether another delta P could have occurred instead of looking for cameras.
Yes, but sir, if I could get a camera in there, right, the camera would be able to tell me if we could pick up the plug. The camera, when the camera goes in, if it could identify the plug, right, we could see if the plug was in fact intact.
Well, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
No.
Yes, sir.
Well, you're going to go past numerous tanks and 4 bodies before you got to a plug, surely.
Right. So there are a couple of scenarios here. If the plug was intact, yes, correct. But I did not know if the plug was intact. The plug could have been ruptured inside there. In which case, I might have been able to get to the plug first. I don't know. That is what I was trying to find out.
Pretty remote possibility, wasn't it?
Sir, I simply didn't know what caused the incident at the time.
I understand nobody knew for sure.
Yeah.
What your job, presumably, was to try and weigh up the odds.
Yeah. Correct.
What were the realistic prospects of that plug being ruptured in such a way that you would be able to send a camera in, get to the plug before you got to the people?
Right.
What was the realistic prospect? Do it now. Exercise your mind on it now.
Well, it's maybe a low prospect, but the camera would also tell me, while it wouldn't tell me about the delta P, right, in that case, the camera would also tell me where the bodies are, where the men are located, where the people are located, right? I needed to get a distance. I needed to know what I was dealing with. So the camera footage would also help me with that. This is not just one element.
Did it ever occur to you that you were seeking perfection? You know, a degree of knowledge that could only come with perfection?
No, sir.
No.
I was trying to get what the best or realistic assessment I could make so I could get somebody in there.
Within the time frame available? That's where you keep missing that out, don't you? It's within the time frame available.
Right. And yes, sir, and I come back to the decision I had to make to send, right?
You see, Mr. Piper, if you had contacted an expert you would have got the answer on that Delta P if it could recur.
Yes, sir.
And I referred you, I'm not too sure, but I referred you to the expert report of Incotec based in San Fernando. Incotec is based in San Fernando. And they said, they answered that question. Prior to Mr. Christopher, at page 1534, prior in the supplemental core bundle, at paragraph 4.4 and 5, prior to Mr. Christopher Boudram's rescue, the entire system stabilized and equalized itself at both ends of SL36, and thus allowed Mr. Boudram to negotiate the pipe without any disruptions, as the system was static. This condition was the best opportunity to attempt a rescue, as removing the blank at berth 5 or shutting down the compressor would have released the stored potential energy from the compressed air and thus disturbed the equilibrium and thereby imperil any divers in the air pocket. If you had contacted an expert and did not look for cameras, you would have been able to know that the pipeline was safe for diving.
Right. And so just to repeat, right, I don't know what that is based on, right, but I don't know what that expert is based on, right, but just to repeat, we did contact an expert, right, Mr. Michael B., and we did speak to him on the night.
Who was that expert?
From OTSL.
So if I can object, it's also, in my respectful submission, an unfair question, right? Incotec has taken a long time to produce a report. It's unfair to put to the witness that that information could have been obtained at that time. No one has suggested that. Well, I mean, I think he's answering the question because he's telling us that he did consult someone locally to provide the answer to that question.
Correct. Yes,
so
sir.
Why don't we let him tell us that?
Yes.
Very well, sir. Yeah. I just wasn't only a question of consultation. I was only a question of how long it would take to deliver the advice. Well, let's find out if he got the advice.
Right.
Yeah.
So we did speak to the expert from OTSL through Mr. Wee, and he did tell us about the Delta P, and he did tell us, you know, you couldn't be certain. That was our information on the night.
Couldn't be certain that there was not a prospect of a second Delta?
Correct. And until such time, you know, we should not send somebody in.
Do you know who that was? The person?
Cannot remember his second name. It was Antonio, I think was his first name.
Antonio?
Yes, yes. From OTSL.
Donowa,
thank you.
Page 2786.
And your recollection of that is that he was telling you, in effect, that a second Delta P could not be eliminated.
Correct. So.
And that, therefore, there was a risk associated with that.
Yes, sir.
If any diver went into the pipe.
Yes, sir. That was my understanding.
Well, did he give you an opinion, a written opinion? Because we haven't got anything in the record that Mr. Donowa gave, a written opinion to that effect.
I believe there is something in the record.
Well, I have a statement from Mr. Donowa in the record at page 2785. And at paragraph 12, in respect of what was said that night, he said, later that night, Mr. Michael Y. telephoned me. He told me that he wanted me to speak to his incident team, and I agreed for him to put me on speakerphone. I was introduced to his team, but I cannot recall them now. They asked me what could have happened to the divers, and I believe what I said was that they encountered a Delta P incident. They did not appear to understand what a Delta P incident was, So I explained it, and in fact, my explanation, I sent a video to Michael Wise showing a crab being sucked into a pipeline because of a Delta P incident, and another giving a detailed scientific explanation. Then a few days later, Lisa? Yes. What paragraph?
17.
At paragraph 17. A few days later, before the retrieval of the bodies, I was asked by OTSL CEO, Mr. Bertrand, to join in a telephone conversation he was having with Heritage. I did join, although I do not recall the ex-date. It was me, Mr. Bertrand, and Mr. O.C. Fleming, Heritage lead, and several others whose names I do not recall. The purpose of the call was to discuss the possibility of doing a penetration dive into the pipeline to search for survivors. I advised of the safety issues, as there was no way to confirm that the pipeline was totally equalized and flooded and free of possibility of a Delta event. So on the date in question, when Mr. Donowa spoke to you on the night, that opinion was not sought as to whether another Delta P could have, based on his statement. A few days later, then he was asked that.
Right. I have to say, sir, I cannot fully recollect, but that was my view, because we were still, even after the discussions, I know we still were concerned about the second Delta P, so no evidence.
All right. Now, the next reason, it was also unknown what caused that event to subside. Well, in respect of that, you knew that Christopher Boudram and Michael Kurban, Christopher Boudram came out of the pipeline and Michael Kurban went in, and you knew that the hyperbaric chamber was flooded. I'm sorry, it was not flooded. Not so?
Correct.
Right. The conditions inside the pipeline were unknown. Well, Mr. Piper, I've put this to you already, but you could have known the condition of the pipeline from Mr. Boudram and from Mr. Kurban. Then your next condition, your next factor, the LMCS divers were diving into the pipeline in an unplanned manner, and then you went on to say you produced, without having a method statement, a risk assessment, a job hazards analysis, etc., etc. You really expected, in order to make that decision, you wanted a written risk assessment, job hazard, and how long that would have taken?
Right. So I'm not saying, right. I am not saying written, right? One needs to at least, right? One needs to at least understand what one is coming up against. One needs to at least sort of try to identify.
About 4 a.m., I mean.
Right. One needs to at least try to identify. One needs to try to risk assess. One needs to try to mitigate how you're going in, how you're coming back out. Right? So there are a number of factors you have to deal with before you could say, hey, listen, we believe, yes, this can be done. But it has to be done, sir. We cannot just go into the pipeline and say, I'll pull you out with a rope. Right? So I am not saying it had to be written, but we need to have some idea of what we, right?
And are you saying you had no idea?
Say again, sir?
Yes. You've identified in your statement, you've just been asked by Mr. Maharaj, as item number 4 of the, perhaps we can put it back on the screen, page 1364. You've identified that as being one of the reasons why you were concerned about sending any divers into the pipeline.
Correct.
And you say that the LMCS divers were diving into the pipeline in an entirely unplanned manner.
Correct.
Without having produced any kind of method statement, risk assessment, or job hazard analysis. And you're saying that didn't need to be in writing, so long as you understood what it was.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Well, what I want to understand from you is this, you see, is that you spoke, did you not, with Mr. Dexter Guerra?
Yes, sir.
On more than one occasion?
Yes.
Certainly at 1832 and at 1845. Did you not ask him, well, why these people don't, what's the plan? How is this going to work? What contingencies are you taking?
Yeah.
Did you ask him that?
I don't think I asked him in so many words. I asked him, he said, listen, the guys just wanted to go into the pipe, right? But we didn't discuss any plan. He didn't have any plan because we still did not know what existed.
Really? You spoke to him for what, I think a total of about 5 minutes in those 2 phone calls, and he gave you no idea of what the plan would look like?
No, sir. No idea.
And you didn't ask him?
At the time I spoke with Dexter, right, there were some hostilities. There were some hostilities on the berth, and I called Dexter to see how, to settle the berth down. No, I didn't speak with him on it.
Is it that the calls to Dexter Guerra were nothing to do with rescuing, but to settle down hostilities?
The first call was to settle down hostilities, right?
Why were there hostilities?
There were hostilities when we said halt on the diving, sir.
Right. I don't suppose that surprised you particularly, did it?
No, sir, I expected.
In any event, there were such hostilities. But given that we're about an hour, when you're having these calls with Dexter Guerra, about an hour or so after Mr. Boudram has emerged from the pipe, did you not think that they were at least seeing if there were ways in which the rescue might be effected within the time scale that permitted them to be rescued alive?
Right.
Yes. So what I'm a little concerned to understand from you is if you were genuinely concerned that they were diving, as you put it in your statement, as in an entirely unplanned manner, why wouldn't you have said to them, to him anyway, look, I can't permit this dive. I'm not going to lift this diving restriction on diving, which is causing the hostilities between us. I'm not going to lift that until I know what kind of plan you have to effect. Tell me, persuade me, Mr. Dexter Guerra, persuade me that I should permit this. Did you say that to him?
No, I didn't say that to him, sir.
Do you think it would have been a good idea, one way to quell the hostility that existed, one way for you to be satisfied at least of some kind of plan, even if you disagreed with it? Do you follow?
Yeah.
Did you not think it would have been prudent to have asked him? How long have you known this man?
I've known Dexter for a while.
15 years?
But maybe more.
Maybe more?
Yeah.
So, and you knew him to be a responsible sort of a fella?
Reasonably.
Reasonably. I mean, I think there was an incident when he took the barge off without permission some months before. But it was hardly a major event. He took the barge away from the edge of the dock without permission. Ultimately, there was permission. We've heard from him about that. That aside, I mean, you've known him for a long time, and he works for LMCS, didn't he?
Yes, yes, sir.
You were employing them as being good company to do all these sort of work. So presumably you had some confidence in him.
Well, yes, sir, I have to say some confidence, yes.
All right. Well, with that some confidence, did you not think it worthwhile saying to him, since you were talking to him, you called him, didn't you?
I called him, yes, sir.
You called him twice. Yeah. So given that you felt the need to do that, did it not strike you as being appropriate to say, well, look, Dexter, I need to know what it is that you have by way of a plan. Tell me what it is, so that you yourself can make an assessment.
Yeah.
Did you?
No, I didn't. No, sir, I did not.
Do you think you should?
Right? Well, at the time, sir, right?
But answer my question first, and then you can add your right, all right?
Yes, no, I did not. No, I did not.
Yeah, you said that.
Right.
My question is, do you think you should have?
Maybe I should have, but the reason at the time, with the hostilities, I know that people were very emotional, right? I did not think them to be the best people, the best group to go into the pipeline, right?
That was an assessment made by you, which
yes,
I can entirely understand.
Yes.
What I'm asking you is whether or not you thought it would have been prudent for you to have asked him, what is your plan? What is the plan? You've got to tell me, Mr. Guerra, what is the plan? Yeah. Help me understand how I can sanction this.
Yes. Maybe in hindsight, maybe I should have, yes, sir. Okay. Despite all that was going on.
Thank you.
Mr. Piper, you were engaged in communicating with diving companies to get opinions, not so?
Yes, sir.
You were consulting with them, you were waiting on their answers, correct?
Yes, sir.
You had the LMCS divers who were experienced, commercial divers, experienced in diving, they had all equipment, can do a rescue. Why you didn't consult with them?
Sir, nobody, right? Nobody, right? That team was emotionally charged, right? Right? My assessment of that is you cannot, it would not be a prudent position to take or decision to make, right? With a group who are emotionally charged, who have never done anything like this before, who have no training to do anything like this. Nobody has done this, to the best of my knowledge, gone into a pipeline.
Did you find out from them?
So nobody has ever done this.
Did you find out from them?
No, I did not find out, but I knew nobody had done this.
You assumed
yes,
that
sir.
They never, you
yes,
assumed
sir.
that they didn't have the requisite experience and training and competence
yes, sir.
to go into pipeline.
Yes, sir. This is a 30-inch pipeline with oil. This is a 30-inch pipeline with oil running for a quarter mile, right? We had no idea. Nobody had ever had any training in this, right, to go into this pipeline. They were emotionally charged, and at the time it was not the best group to send in that pipeline.
I am suggesting to you that you would agree with me that in this statement you gave as to the factors which influence your decision not to allow anyone to go into the pipeline, to dive, to do a rescue, at no stage you mentioned that the LMCS divers were too emotional and you didn't consult them. Look at the grounds. Look at the factors you considered.
No, I didn't mention it, but they were I knew they were very emotional.
But
it was clear.
When you gave the statement, you knew that you were giving the factors to the Commission to consider as to the grounds you considered to prevent you from allowing that dive.
So, admittedly, I did not have it here, but that was one of the considerations.
Okay. And yesterday you told us,
you spent
a lot of time telling us about persons who were involved in accidents and maritime accidents, and sometimes when there are rescues, those who are the rescuers die and the accident victims are not saved. You remember you told us, you gave us?
Correct, sir.
Nowhere you have put that in this witness statement. That is not in the witness statement as to the factors you considered.
Well, sorry, but I didn't. Yeah.
Look at it.
No, I'm agreeing with you, sir. But that is knowledge I've had in this industry. I've been in the marine industry for 4 decades, so that is knowledge I have in the industry.
And that is knowledge that you had at the time when you did this witness statement?
Yes, sir.
And that is knowledge that you had at the time which you were saying influenced your decision?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. Okay, let's go to another area, and the final area of my questioning to you, Mr. Piper. I want you to look at the IMT notes. That is in the supplemental core bundle. Yes, 1572. And I want to start off at 1541. And before I start off at 1541, I want for you to refresh your memory what you said that Mr. Christopher Budram told you at paragraphs 130 and 131 of your witness statement, page 1368. At 1368. Paragraph, that's at page 1368 and 1369. And you see that among the things you said in your statement there, that I asked Budram how he was doing. Mr. Budram responded by saying, Mr. Piper, I want to say up front, I ain't think them fellas make it, or words to that effect. And then the phone was placed on speaker, on speaker mode. Mr. Budram modes were audible to personal wrong. Mr. Budram then indicated that he crossed two welded seams on the way out of the pipeline. He said he then crossed blacks who was unresponsive. He indicated that 4 of them were making their way out of the pipeline and they were helping Kazim Ali Jr., who had a broken leg and arm. He then said they came across an air pocket, which there was 1 person less, after which there was 1 person less. He then said they came across a second air pocket, after which they lost Kazim Jr. He further stated that Faizi was with him until he reached the elbow, and then Faizi said he couldn't make it. Mr. Budram did not ask during that conversation whether anyone else was rescued from the pipeline. I want you to look at 1547 and see what the IMT recorded Mr. Budram said. 1541, sorry. 41. Look at the top of the page.
What page, sir?
1541.
Yes,
Read
sir.
it carefully and then I'll ask you the question.
Yes, sir.
You read it?
Read it.
Right. I have not seen in this note that was taken by the scribe at the IMT that Mr. Budram said, or Mr. Budram indicated that he didn't think the divers made it. Could you show me in this note where he said that? Mr. Budram indicated that he didn't think the divers made it. That Mr. Budram said that he didn't.
No, sir, it's not there.
And I also did not see that he crossed over blacks who was unresponsive.
No, sir, it's not there.
And I also do not see in these notes, which were made at the time, that when he came across an air pocket, there was 1 person less.
No, sir.
When you wrote your witness statement, when you prepare your witness statement, what, you wrote it from memory or you wrote it from contemporaneous notes?
Right. No, I did not take notes, sir. There's some, I did not take notes, sir, so I'm going to answer, if I may, please.
Sure.
There are some things that stick with you. This is one of the things that stuck with me, and I kept repeating this, right? This was also recorded in the IMT, in the log, I believe, similar to what I said here. This was recorded in that log. It was not in that note, but I believe it was in the log somewhere.
Well, I'd be glad if you could show us it. Because I want to tell you, Mr. Mustaq Mohammed gave a written statement.
Page 1574.
4 at the top.
Page 1574, it's the name.
But this would have been prepared after. Yes, 1574, I got it. But this log would have been prepared after.
No, sir, this was prepared on the night.
Well, help us. This at 1541, was someone writing this at the time?
Well, it's written, sir.
Yeah, but you are the commander.
Yes, sir.
Did you have someone writing this at the time that?
No, sir. At the time, we were in the incident command post. The scribe at the time documented it in the log immediately. And I confirmed that. I looked at the log and I confirmed that.
But the log is typewritten.
Yes, sir. This log was being typed as on a spreadsheet in the incident command, at the incident command post. So the entries were being made immediately.
So you agree with me then, because I'm now saying this, I now noticed it.
Okay, that's fair.
So you would agree with me that what is stated in 1541, what Mr. Budram said is inconsistent with what is stated. What you pointed me out is inconsistent in the sense that there are things.
Well, let's take them one at a time. First of all, you say in your statement, paragraph 131, that the first thing that Mr. Budram said to you is, Mr. Piper, I want to say up front, I ain't think them fellas make it.
Yes, sir.
Now, that's what you've recorded in your statement.
Yes, sir.
That does not appear, does it, on the diary memo note at page 1541?
Right. So,
no, one thing at a time.
Sorry?
It doesn't appear there, does it?
Correct.
And it doesn't appear in the log at 1574?
Correct.
Right. But it's something that you told us is stuck in your mind?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So we're agreed at any rate. This is, when you're writing this statement, it's from memory.
Right. And I did refer to this log as well, because in the 1574, right, because at the time I was right at this log, standing right there in this area, and what I heard when Mr. Budram spoke, when Mr. Budram said, I don't think they made it, the phone was given to me. Immediately after I put the phone on speaker, and I had other parties joining, like Mr. Wee, Mr. Mohammed, I believe Narissa Fevik, I believe Mr. Fleming Holder was there, Mr. Paul Yearwood, right? So I then put the phone, Paul had brought the phone for me. I then put the phone on speaker as people were coming in, right? So I heard the first bit. I was the person who heard that it was addressed to me, and I heard that, right? And I'm aware that nobody else heard it.
First, when you were connected with Mr. Budram at the hospital, who made that arrangement?
Mr. Ramkisoon, who went to the hospital, and via Mr. Paul Yearwood.
Right. So Mr. Ramkisoon,
yeah.
What do you say his name?
I think it's Shane, I think.
Shane.
Yes.
I'm going to call him Shane. So Shane goes to the hospital.
Yes, sir.
And he obviously speaks to Mr. Boudram.
Yes, sir.
Before he makes a phone call to you.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, do you know what he said to Mr. Boudram?
Well, I think once he got there, he just had the phone to Mr. Boudram, say, listen, we need to talk, because he had a very, very limited time, a minute or two.
Sure.
So I don't know if he had much
he must
conversation.
Have at least introduced himself.
Of course,
told
yes.
him why he was there and things like that.
Of course.
Exactly.
Yes.
You don't know what he said to him, do you?
No, sir.
No. You don't know if he told him, for example, that they still haven't got anybody out of the pipe.
Yes, I don't know if he told him.
Okay. All right. But anyway, the first thing he said to you is, Mr. Piper, I want to say up front, I ain't think them fellas make it.
Correct.
This was at 10 o'clock that night.
Yes, that is what he said to me.
Yeah, but this is at 10 o'clock that night.
Yes, sir.
According to your own timeline that you told me before we had our break, you ain't thinking them fellas made it either, have you?
Well, again, sir, we at this point, there was no way to tell. There simply was no way to tell.
Well, on your own calculation,
yes, sir.
It was an extremely slim chance that 5 hours after the event, they would still be
yes,
alive.
Sir. Yes, sir.
You agree with that, don't you?
Yes.
I mean, I put the word extremely in, but you don't disagree with me, do you? Do you?
It would have been difficult to, assess they would last much longer.
His sentiments coincided with your own.
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you.
That we got that in the second note has some of the things that are recorded,
Okay,
but one of the things that neither in the scribe note or in the typewritten note, it has the statement you say from memory. I want to say, Mr. Piper, I want to say in front, I ain't think them fellas make it.
Correct, sir, and I'm very well aware of that.
Okay.
I included that in my statement because that is something that stuck with me, right? I am aware that it was not in this note here, this log, but that statement stuck with me, and I thought I should include it.
Okay. Look again at page 1541. And there's a notation which states at, you see 202?
Yes, sir.
Which states clear water, no signs of oil, no airspace, difficult to tell if any airspace because of the position of the camera. So at 202, according to the notes that the IMT had, would it not be that the pipeline had clear waters, no sign of oil, no airspace?
Right. So this is a very short distance into the pipeline, right? Maybe less than 100 feet.
I'm just asking what is recorded. The IMT had this information at that time?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that information was shared prior to that.
Okay.
That information was shared with the dive experts through Mr. Raul Seals to do an assessment, which they still came back and said they were not willing to send their persons into the pipeline. So it was shared with them. Okay.
Just underneath that, you see on that night, it seems as though the IMT knew of differential pressure.
Yes, sir.
Plug rupture or removal will equalize.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the IMT had that information.
Yes, as I said, we had spoken to Mr. Donovan earlier.
Yeah. Will equalize.
Yes, if the plug is ruptured, sir, or remove it, will equalize.
Yeah. Good. And let's go to page 1542, where it is stated that crawler, you see at about the middle of the page, crawler put down.
Yes, sir.
220 feet into pipe with tanks and plug from both 6 side yellow, round and white. You see
Yes,
that?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right. Can I explain that?
Yes, what you understood it to mean.
Right. So what actually happened is that as they were feeding it, apparently they had some rotation on. As they were feeding it, they actually did not get to the 220 feet. The hose, the line, the connection was actually turning on itself. So the crawler didn't actually go in 220 feet. That is my understanding. It was recording the travel, but the crawler didn't travel. That was my understanding on the time.
Okay. Let's go to 1544. And this is a very interesting page. You see about 4 lines down, it says, business continuity, 2:30 p.m. See that?
Yes, sir.
And then you see it says, recovery, not rescue.
Yes, sir.
At 1544, if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's a heading, business continuity. And you have 2:30 p.m. It's at the top of the page, 1544.
All right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Business continuity, 2:30 p.m. Recovery, not rescue. Eastern divers not willing to go on. See that?
Yes, sir.
And I think that means riser 6 berth. Something site to be secured 8 days before loading. So
yes, sir.
Wouldn't that be something of business you all were expecting? PARIA was expecting, and it was to be in 8 days or something like that?
Right. Yes, sir. Right. Let me explain. The configuration of the port, is such that the location of berths 5 and 6 are on the northern side of the port, and the location of, that's where we do our black oils, fuel oil and crude. On the southern side of the port, about maybe 6,000 feet, maybe 5,000 to 6,000 feet away, on the southern side of the port is where we have our main viaduct. Right, so at that main viaduct is where we do all our clean products. So in discussions with commercial, right, because part of the incident command is for business continuity, to stabilize the incident and of course to continue on as and when appropriate. So on the southern side of the port, which is where we handle all our clean products, right, we separated, we isolated. I had one group working there, and we said we will not involve that group, the OTSs and the operators. We didn't need to involve them in the incident response. So that is what that deals with there. So they could operate on that side of the port. Right?
But you would also agree with it shows that the IMT was considering recovery and not rescue.
Right. Okay, so that note...
And that was 2:30 p.m. on, 2:30 a.m. on Saturday.
Right.
Sorry, 2:30 p.m. on
right.
Saturday.
Right. So the note says, rescue not recovery, Eastern divers not willing to go on. In fact, Eastern divers had indicated that they sometime in maybe about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning, they had considered that they would not send their people in. We were looking at a dry rescue, right, because they were not divers, although the company is Eastern Divers. They are confined space entry specialists. They had indicated that they will not go in, and they also indicated, as far as they were concerned, it was a recovery and not a rescue. So that note in my mind is what treats with that. That is not the IMT making that decision at that time.
So Eastern Divers took the position that at that stage it would be a recovery and not rescue.
That is the position they took, sir.
Okay.
I mean, surely that was your position as well. This is a day later. How long did you think? I mean, must have been your position.
So we were still hoping. I mean, it's
just
so yeah, okay. So yes, I personally was moving to that position, but it was still difficult for me to move to that position. I was still, hoping some way. So we were still considering some way that we could get to those men, sir. I did not at that point in time make that transition yet.
But,
all right.
But if you look at the discussion, look at what is happening underneath after that. Wouldn't you say that that is what was being thought about? Recovery? In order to get to
exactly where, sir?
In order to get to know where the persons were. Said possible 3 to 4 feet, cameras can go in, cut a test hole, etc., crawler with aim, utilize the diver that got to the tank yesterday. So you were thinking of Michael Kurban.
Right, so...
And you were thinking of Michael Kurban in a different context, not to rescue.
No, say again, sir.
Utilize the diver that got to the tank yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Isn't that Michael Kurban?
Yes. I don't know why that is there, but if I may, on Saturday, while we were still looking at rescue, we had to start considering other options, right?
Other option of a recovery.
We had to consider recovery, sir, and we also were still considering pumping out of the pipeline, right? So we were mobilizing pumps and so on. But we also had in parallel to look at if it is we needed to go into recovery, which this was later on. We also had to start looking at those options.
Well, I got that impression from the notes, and I'll show you later down, that on Saturday, the IMT was considering, as you say, rescue, but also making plans for recovery, considering plans for recovery.
Yes, sir, and we had to consider plans in parallel.
And in the plans for recovery, you were thinking of sending in, you could answer me now, but I'll show you something in the notes after. You were considering sending in Michael Kurban into the pipe.
No, sir. At no point in time was I considering Michael Kurban into the pipe.
I'll take your answer. We get to that.
Yes.
All right? So let's go to the next page, 1545. I don't think we have anything. And we go to 1547. You see you're listed here, Royal Seals, Mitchells, Eastern, OTSL. Are these the person you had on standby, not so?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And you also, and there's always listed Michael Kurban.
Yes, sir. I don't know who made these notes, and I don't know what was I don't know why they would have put that note there.
Well,
but at no point in time was I ever considering Michael Kurban.
Well, these are the IMT notes disclosed by PARIA, and it shows the name Michael Kurban.
So
after you have admitted that the IMT was considering both rescue and recovery,
yes, sir.
You have told us Michael Kurban was not considered for rescue in your evidence. Mm-hmm. So could you explain to us you are the head of the IMT?
Yes, sir. I don't know who put that note there and for what purpose, sir. Right? It's just that name is just written there on its own. I don't know what for.
It's written on its own?
Okay, so I apologize. It's just standing there on the page, right, with no explanation. I don't know why that name is there.
At 1572, that is your time, that's PARIA timeline, correct?
Yes, correct, sir.
And you see at 1549, S. Ramkisoon informed from A. Farah that additional divers, LMCF divers, were called in.
Yes,
see
sir.
that?
Yes, sir.
And at 1800, you see diver Michael Kurban recovered the GoPro camera and cylinder from the pipe, which I think that would mean the tank. So
yes,
you were aware at that time that Michael Kurban had entered the pipe and there was recovery of a GoPro camera from the pipe.
Right. So I don't know, as I said when I spoke to Catherine, right, I don't know who gave that information there, but when I spoke to Catherine, right, she could not confirm, so I don't know who called in that information, sir.
But according to this note of PARIA, this information was given to the IMT, that the GoPro camera was recovered,
yes, sir,
from the pipe.
Yes, sir.
And you could have used that GoPro camera if you wanted to see the condition in the pipe.
So honestly,
well, let me put it this way.
Yeah.
That GoPro camera could have been used, not you, but it could have been used to see the condition in the pipeline.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right? Right, but as I said, just to explain again.
And that
right.
and that GoPro camera was known to the IMT at 6 p.m.
Right. So I don't know if it is Catherine who called this in, but she could not confirm, we could not confirm. Right? This is just her saying, right? We tried, we spoke with LMCS, they would not, they moved away, so we couldn't get it, but we could not confirm that.
Can I understand this, please? Because you spoke to Mr. Dexter Guerra half an hour later.
Yeah.
Did you ask him?
No, sir. With all that was going on, no, sir, I didn't ask him about it.
Well,
right? So,
let's be clear about this.
Yeah.
You regarded video footage of the inside of that pipe as being the sole determining factor as to whether or not you were going to permit a rescue.
Yes, sir.
The mere whiff, can I suggest, of a camera that might have been retrieved from that pipe would have been something that would have exercised your mind immediately.
Yes, sir.
Is it really your answer that when you spoke to Mr. Guerra half an hour later, you did not ask him about the GoPro?
Yeah.
Is that your answer?
Yes, sir. There was just so much happening on that time. I can't even remember when this was recorded. No, sir, I did not ask him.
So you didn't ask him then?
I do.
Now I understand you say you didn't, and it was an oversight on your part.
Yes. Right, and I am not sure actually when, at what time I actually learned from Catherine. I am not sure what time I learned that from Catherine.
Well, it's in the log at 1800 hours. This is contemporaneously being made, isn't it?
Yes, but I don't know what time that came to my attention. It's in the log, but whether anybody told me at the time, my only recollection is when I spoke to Catherine and what she told me. I didn't pick it up at that time.
You mean it's possible that something as important as a camera from inside the pipe could have been recorded in the log and you've been unaware of it?
Yes,
for half an hour.
Right. So I spoke with. Yes, sir. No, I cannot recall, honestly, I cannot recall what time I would have seen that. Okay.
In any event, you spoke to Mr. Guerra 15 minutes later.
Yes, sir.
Was it an oversight then as well?
It was an oversight, sir. It would have been.
You spoke to him.
As I said, I couldn't pick it up.
You spoke to him 15 minutes after that as well.
Sir.
Was that an oversight as well?
Yes, sir.
And you spoke to him 7 minute minutes later again. Was that also an oversight?
So there was a lot happening at that point in time. And as I said, I don't recall when I actually got the information. I don't recall, right? Now, I would certainly have thought, right, LMCS having this information, right? I would certainly have thought if they had any salient information, right, knowing, right, that they wanted to go in a pipeline and we were stopping them, surely LMCS would have come forward with that information, right? Even if it was an oversight on my part, surely they should have come forward with the information. Yes. Surely when Catherine tried to look at it, right, they would not have walked away. As I said, she wasn't even sure it was a camera, it was a GoPro, right? But they never came forward with it.
I follow all of that, and an entirely fair point to make, if I may say so. If they had that in their hands, why would they share it?
Correct.
I get that. But I'm asking you at the moment, all right? And what I want to understand is that the last time you made a call to Mr. Guerra was at 7:07 that evening, and you spoke to him for over 3 minutes.
Correct.
Right? So that, on any view, is over an hour after the log has recorded a GoPro as being recovered by
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Kerban, right?
Yes.
Are you saying it's entirely possible that for that hour or so you would have been wholly unaware of the existence of that GoPro?
I honestly cannot remember what time I found out about the GoPro, sir. And I only found out from Catherine, and I cannot remember the time.
And in answer to questions from Mr. Maharaj, is it your evidence that you never demanded sight of that GoPro?
Yes, sir. I never demanded sight of the GoPro.
You could have, couldn't you?
Yes, sir. I could have.
Was that also an oversight?
Well, I would have thought, yes, I should have demanded it. Maybe it was an oversight. But as I said, if there was anything on that GoPro, LMCS would have come forward with that GoPro. So.
Well, they certainly should have.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Right? They should have shared that GoPro.
Thank you.
I now want to show you some entries which will show that you had enough to know, the IMT had enough to know that this was Delta P, the men were in the pipe at an early stage, even before Budram came out. Okay?
Okay.
So can I take you to page 1572? And if you look at 1415, you would see 5 divers entered the chamber, etc. Right? They give the names. Then if you look at 1455, 1455, it says, A. Farah informed no signs of divers or cylinders in the chamber. Then you go to 1523. I'm sorry, I really want to go to page 1523 at your witness statement, and I think this is where you would have said that Mr. Kazim Ali spoke to you and told you that the inflatable plug was removed, and it's at page 1352 at paragraph 30 of your witness statement. Okay? So that is, I'm working on the timeline. Then further at page 2008.
Just one at a time. Let me just catch up.
I'm going too fast.
So I've got available to me page 1572, which is the log
Yes.
to which you've referred.
So, and I had referred to the last entry on the log I referred to was 1455.
Yes, Mr. Farrow informing him
Right.
that there was
And
no
then
sign
I
of any
wanted to
divers.
show that in the chronology, I want to show that at paragraph 30 of Mr. Piper's witness statement,
Right.
he spoke at paragraph 30 at page 1352. He spoke at 1523 to Mr. Kazim Ali, and Mr. Kazim Ali told him that the accident occurred with the removal of the plug.
Yes.
And then I wanted to show that in the sequence at page 2008 of the supplemental core bundle, volume 3.
Just a minute.
2008.
Yeah, volume.
Yeah, 2008. That's when Chris bought
The page 2008.
2155 in my bundle. Right. Dive operational at berth number 6.
Yes, what paragraph?
Yeah, 1508 hours.
At 1508 hours. At 1508, offshore operator Case Scott reported to OTS J. Ramdan that 5 divers entered the chamber. A splash was seen on the camera during operation, after which the divers could not be seen. And then...
All right. Have you? Are you keeping up with this?
I
think
I don't have it here, but
the easier way
I
to do
understand.
this is for you to see it on the screen, so that you can answer the question that Mr. Maharaj will have for you. So
Right. You
you've
see
seen you've seen the log where he points out at 14:45.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Farrow's informed the visual camera's not functioning. Then he's taken you to a statement where you spoke to Mr. Kazim Ali at 15:23, where he describes about the removal of the plug. And now he's taken you to the dive operation document at my 2155, which shows that at 8 minutes past 3, the offshore operator, Mr. Scott, reported to Mr. Ramdan that 5 of the divers had entered the chamber. There was a splash and
Correct.
All right, so we're with it so far. We're with you.
And then one more, at page 2008, volume 3 of the supplemental.
Same page.
Oh, sorry, there's the same page. At 1530.
15:30 hours.
Yeah, at page 2008 of the same bundle.
Basis information received
Received from OTS, it was reported that there was a rush of liquid
into
the pipe.
Right.
So,
Can you just say again, please?
Yes. At 15:30, basis information received from OTS, it was reported that there was a rush of liquid into the pipe.
Oh, okay.
All right, that's in that log.
So, based on what I've read to you, I am suggesting to you by 3:30 p.m. the IMT had the following information available to it. 1, the men were working on an open pipeline in the hyperbaric chamber. 2, the men were removing the inflatable plug. 3, a splash was seen on the screen. 4, the men were not in the chamber. 5, there was a rush of liquid into the pipeline. So wouldn't that be information for you to conclude reasonably that the men was in the pipeline, were in the pipeline?
Right. So I don't know where the OTS got that information, that there was a rush of liquid into the pipeline. Nobody was able to see what was going on. He was not on site, right? So he never gave me that information at that time. The information I got from Mr. Ali when I spoke to him, right? The information I got from Mr. Ali when I spoke to him was that they moved the first plug, They were moving the second plug, and he did not know what happened.
Okay.
I was speaking, if I may finish, please.
Okay.
I was speaking with Mr. Harichan and Mr. Ramdan, who was the OTS, and he never gave that information to me, that there was any rush of liquid. He just told me they were doing the sea searches. He told me he was talking to Mr. Farah, who was just lying on the barge holding his head.
Okay. Mr. Piper, if you had that information, would you have started from around 3:30 p.m. to consider the plan to rescue the men from the pipeline?
Yes, sir. And all that time on the way, we were through Heritage, Mr. Mohammed, through Heritage, we were already mobilizing the best equipment we could get, sir.
But unless I have it wrong, isn't this PARIA's timeline? This is part of PARIA's record that was disclosed to us.
Yes, sir, but at the time, I did not have that information at all. Right?
You got it at any time?
No, sir. That liquid, of that rush of liquid, right? That was never brought to my attention.
But that was very important information.
Yes,
because
sir.
If you had got that information,
that was not brought to my attention.
That would have led you to the conclusion that the men would have been in the pipe.
Of course.
Yeah.
In fairness to Mr. Piper, can we have that document? You see, it says at the top, incident, 5 divers went missing, 1 was retrieved. Do you see that at the top of the document? Is it not on the screen in front?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Is it on that screen? Yes.
Yes, sir.
You see right at the very top where it says dive operation.
Yes,
that rather suggests that this is not contemporaneous, doesn't it?
Correct. Yes.
Right. So it's written after the event.
Yes, sir.
Because if they're writing up there at the time 1 was retrieved, that was after 15:30.
Correct.
All right. So it can't have been. And can you go to the second page, please, where it says at the bottom of the second page, 2.1. No, 2.1. Yes. Mine's a different pagination. So to scroll up a little further, please. Next. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. No, you're going the wrong way. Keep going, please, to the next page. Now, I want the foot of the page, please, so that Mr. Piper can see it. I think there's been some confusion about putting these documents in the right order, but never mind. So what we're going to do, have a look at mine.
74, 23.
At the bottom of that page, my page 2156, what does it say? Who's written it?
Yes, OTS J. Ramdan received information from Coast Guard dive team on site.
No, below that.
2156 I'm looking at, page 2156.
Yes, right at the bottom,
Oh,
there's somebody's name there.
Yes, or Leandra Singh.
PC Leandra Singh.
Yes, sir.
Who's that?
Or port coordinator.
Sorry?
The port coordinator.
The port coordinator.
Yes, sir.
Works for you.
Yes, sir.
Right. And he's written, he's put his name to this.
Yes.
Right. And then he says 0700 to 1900.
Yes.
So is this document intended to provide information of the events that took place between those times?
Yes.
I think it's wrong because it does have 2010 in there as well, but never mind.
So,
Mr. Leandra Singh is writing this. Where would he have got the information for this?
So Miss Leandra Singh, the port coordinator, was documenting this, right? Now, I spoke with Miss Leandra Singh on my way there. I was also speaking to Jonathan Ramdan, right?
Yes.
All the time, and that was not brought to my attention at that time. When I arrive on site, so I'm looking at this timeline now. When I arrived on site at 4:55, I called for Mr. Farah, right, to come in. So this is at 5 o'clock now, when I arrived. Immediately after I arrived at 5 to 5, I called for Mr. Farah at 5 o'clock. He was on the way, and at about 10 past 5, people were hearing the knocking, right? And
can we get back to the
yes.
position? Because you weren't on site until around 5 o'clock.
Correct.
Right? But you'd assigned Mr.
Jonathan Ramdan.
No.
Or Visham Harichan.
Who was in charge of the IMT before you arrived?
That would be Paul Yearwood.
Yearwood, that's
right.
it, thank you. So Mr. Yearwood was in charge before
yes,
you
sir.
arrived. The first thing you would have wanted to do upon arrival is to be updated by Mr. Yearwood.
Yes, sir.
Did that not include information that you've had pointed out to you, Mr. Maharaj, that there was a report from OTS that there was a rush of liquid into the pipe?
No, I don't know if he had that information. He did not pass that information to me.
So let's be clear. It is, of course, important information.
Yes, sir.
From wherever it came, it should have been passed to the IMT.
Correct.
And had it been, it would have come to your attention when you arrived, if not before.
Correct.
And if you'd been provided with that information, you would have been able to conclude that there was every prospect of a Delta P
yes,
that had
sir.
dragged these men into the pipe.
Yes, yes, sir.
And had you been informed of, if you'd come to that conclusion at 3:30 that afternoon, you would have actioned it from then.
Of course.
I think that's where you wanted to get to.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Can I have that back, please? Because that's mine. You sick again? You need to go now.
I'm coming to the end.
Go now.
I'm coming to the end, Mr. Piper. I'm coming to the end. Just a few more, right? You have told us that at around 11 o'clock, or the period 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock on Friday night, the IMT was making plans, or discussing plans for a rescue operation, correct?
On Friday night, sir?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, we were in rescue.
The IMT was not making plans for a recovery operation on Friday night.
No, sir, we were in rescue mode.
Rescue mode. I want to show you 1574. And that's in its supplemental CoE.
I'm sorry, we're going to have to immediately. Thank you. Go. It's not your questioning. It's a little unkind. I'm allowed to be unkind.
That's on film.
We'll just stop for a moment
Yes,
and
sir.
see if he can come back. make some progress.
Much obliged. Okay, you had given us the answer that at Friday at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock.
Document which sets out a sort of plan.
Yes.
I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
If you look, I want to refer to the supplemental core bundle 1 at page 1515. This is on the
page 15.
Page 1515.
Is it this one? I've seen 1515 here. So this is volume 4.
But I see this now. I want to show you something on the Saturday morning. I just showed you Friday night.
Okay, sir.
So Saturday morning, 26, look at the bottom of page 1515. 26:2, the time is 2:54 a.m. 2 working drafts for press releases. On the next page, 2 working drafts for press releases moving from rescue to recovery effort. Condolences once bodies are recovered. That is accurate.
Right. This document I'm seeing here at the top, I'm seeing temporary. This is PARIA incident, temp, Andy Anel Alin Chow. This, I don't know if what correspondence this is, right? But they were not members of the IMT.
Oh no, but they were part of the IMT on that date.
Yes, sir.
So they were all, as a matter of fact, they were all communicating with each other.
Yes, sir.
As a matter, as I understand it from the evidence, the PARIA's IMT was combined with persons from Heritage to constitute the IMT for this event.
Yes, sir. And sir, I was not part of this communication, right? So these would be, if you see, they are draft press releases. Normally in incidents like these, right, you always do draft press releases for different scenarios. So that's all that is.
But this communication came to everyone in the IMT, including PARIA-IMT.
I was not in this group, sir. Right?
You were not in this group?
No, sir, I don't recall it.
So today is the first day you're knowing about this?
Yes, but these are just draft. In any event, these are just draft press releases. Anytime you have an incident, you always do draft press releases. You don't just wait up to the last moment. So that is all that is, sir. That does not mean at all that you go from, that you have moved or transitioned from one point to the other. It simply means you do a holding statement. That's standard practice.
Mr. Piper, I want to suggest to you that the evidence shows that the IMT at PARIA was moving slow, very slow, to rescue the persons in the pipeline.
I understand your suggestion, sir, but I want to state to you, right, that is not correct. Given under those circumstances, I am declaring to you that the IMT was making every effort to rescue those men and to protect the lives of the responders.
And I'm suggesting to you that the evidence shows that there was available to the IMT other divers, LMCS divers, experienced with all the equipment to effect a rescue during the period of time the divers most likely would have been alive.
I understand your suggestion, sir, and I am stating to you, right, that I had a duty, right, to those responders, and I had a duty for their lives as well, right, to make sure that their lives were saved, right?
Can I just, before I sit, refer you to what you stated at paragraph 7 of your affidavit? I'm sorry, of your witness statement, at page 1345.
Yes, sir.
As on-scene commander, it was my responsibility to respond urgently to the emergency, assess the incident scene, conditions and circumstances, gather valuable information from the incident scene, act as the on-scene liaison between other respondents and the incident command team, and otherwise feed the incident command team with relevant information to arrive at possible mitigation options and methods, and to participate in the planning and execution of the emergency response. In some instances, I was required to lead the execution process with the support of the team. Would you not agree with me that since you had to assess the conditions and the circumstances and consider all the relevant matters, you had to consider whether you could have got alternative divers, apart from the divers that you contacted, to rescue these men from the pipe?
Yes, sir, and we did that. We got alternative divers, we got the dive experts, right? And they said, right, when whatever information we gathered, that it was too risky to send somebody into that pipe, sir. Right? And again, part of my duty, right, is to the responder. It's his life. That was part of my duty, sir.
I know you could say that now, but you didn't say that in your witness.
No, sir, but that is part of my duty, sir, as the incident commander, and it's written in there in the incident command system.
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Maharaj. Just before we rise for lunch, can I just ask you to help me out with something, please? The log that you've provided to us is in our volume 2, page 1573 to 1576. This is, as I understand it, a contemporaneous log.
Yes, sir.
When did the IMT stand down?
The IMT stood down on the Thursday morning after the recovery of the last bodies when we would have stood down. So when I would have stood down the IMT.
Can you help me, please, as to why the log ends apparently quite abruptly at 1410, page 1576? Is there some part of the log that's somewhere else? Because I haven't found it.
Yes, there has to be some part of the log somewhere else, sir.
Well, just for my satisfaction, please, can someone find out what the position is? We've got four pages of the log. 5. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 5. It appears to stop at 2:10 on Saturday afternoon. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, yes, but I know for a fact the log was being continued. I think what happened here was this was doing on one spreadsheet and then they went over to another spreadsheet. So, yeah, but it is there.
It exists somewhere.
It exists. It does exist, sir.
All right, thank you very much. We'll adjourn now for lunch. 2 o'clock, please. 2 o'clock.